Hey, what's going on, everybody? Week 10 recap, Buffalo Bills style for you. Not really sure how much of a recap it's going to be. Bills lose to the Broncos, drop to 5-5 on the season. Absolutely ugly football game. I'm sure by now you've all seen the 12 men on the field, and Denver misses the field goal. Penalty keeps them alive, kicks the game winner, and there's a few things you can say about that game. Certainly it was an ugly turnover game for Buffalo. Josh is not looking like himself, pretty much this season, aside from the Miami game and maybe the Washington and Vegas game. He hasn't looked himself. This offense hasn't looked like themselves, and it's not a pretty scene right now in Buffalo. I'm sure a lot of you have seen the conferences and the all the stuff floating around on social media, and even Diggs' brother Trayvon's over there, and he's stirring the pot, saying, "Man, get 14 up out of there," and it just a lot of drama and unnecessary stuff just floating around this football team right now. And this is honestly my third attempt at recording this. I sat down the first time to do it, and had it all planned out and whatnot, and then they turn around and then they fire Ken Dorsey, and that pretty much ruined my whole video. Because if you've checked in any of those other recaps I've done this season, 1 through 9, I have called out his name every week, called for him to I don't even say called, I've pleaded with him to stop being so stubborn, to adjust your game plan, and ultimately he didn't. He got fired, and now the Bills move forward, the rest of the season with Joe Brady, a guy who has play calling experience in the NFL. Granted, it wasn't a successful run when he was the OC in Carolina, but on the same hand, it's you got to look at who he had running the offense as well. It was mainly a Teddy Bridgewater-led offense. And then at times they had Sam Darnold come in and run the offense. And outside of DJ Moore, you had Christian McCaffrey, but that was also the years that McCaffrey was hurt and hardly played. So, yeah, I don't know how much stake I'd put into that, but you probably could put a little stake into the fact that he was the offensive guy at LSU during that Burrow and Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson and Clyde Edwards-Helaire, that team that won the national championship and was just dominant. And Brady was the caller there. So I guess whichever way you want to look at it, there'll be some people that'll look at it from the NFL side and be like, yeah, well, he didn't cut it in the NFL, and that's why he's back to a quarterback's coach. Or you'll have the hopefully the majority that'll look at it and be like, yeah, well, hopefully we're going to get the LSU guy. So yeah, changes coming in Buffalo. I don't know how many changes you'll see right off the bat. It's been said by Sean McDermott a handful of times since the firing of Dorsey. It's it's hard to change your offensive scheme halfway through the season. It's hard to basically hit reset. So I don't think you're going to see a dramatic change. I don't think you're going to see a Brian Daboll type offense in Buffalo this season, but hopefully Joe Brady will maybe just bring some energy, a different voice, just maybe a new swagger to the offense, and maybe it'll be just enough to get the guys motivated, because that was another thing. I sat down and recorded this for a second time, and then I listened to Sean McDermott's post-game conference, and I had thoughts on that. And then I listened to his Monday conference after his Tuesday conference after they announced that Dorsey was gone, and then had it recorded and ready to go. And then I see comments he had sitting down with the media again on Wednesday, and it's a little concerning, some of the things he's saying, about how he wants to see more energy and more, just accountability on the offensive side of the ball. And, I don't know how much of that is him trying to, motivate his guys, or how much of that was him trying to justify firing Dorsey, which obviously I was in favor for. Obviously you don't want to see somebody lose their job, their income, their livelihood, but, at the same time, he just wasn't doing his job. So, it was kind of concerning hearing that, saying, he wants his guys to play with more energy, and, sure, that can be a nice motivational tool if it's taken that way, but, everybody takes things different, and there's, there could be some people that take that as a direct shot at them and not want to play. So, there's definitely been some talk swirling around the internet. If you tune into Pat McAfee's show, he definitely loves starting drama and stirring the pot, and, he definitely has a bunch of unnecessary talking points, but he did, bring up, he's like, has Sean McDermott lost the locker room in Buffalo? And at first I kind of laughed at it, just because, I've been a McDermott supporter, loyal to him, because, obviously he's the one that came in and just totally turned the culture around in Buffalo and got us to the playoffs, and, got us to a point now where we're a Super Bowl, we're in the Super Bowl conversation every year. So, I've always been on McDermott's side, but man, ever since that 13-second game in Kansas City, I think Bills fans have been very less patient with him, less lenient when it comes to these boneheaded, calls or plays or games or whatever. And, hearing McAfee say that, especially as a former NFL player himself, it really gets you thinking, because, you look at some of these guys in Buffalo, it's been obvious these past, 2 months, pretty much ever since the London game. The offense has obviously not looked right, but just the players themselves, the way they carry themselves on the sideline. These last 2 weeks, the Cincinnati game and the Denver game, every time the TV camera would pan over to Josh, he's sitting on the bench by himself. In, prior years, you never see that, man. You'd have the backup quarterback sitting with him. Granted, it was normally Matt Barkley, or, last year Case Keenum, but man, Kyle Allen's nowhere to be seen sitting next to Josh. Obviously the offensive coordinator was up in the booth, so who's on the sideline? Well, that'd be your quarterback's coach normally, and quarterback's coach so far this season was Joe Brady. So where was Joe Brady? Granted, they both may have been there at times talking him up. I'm not saying that they didn't, but it's just, the way that the TV makes it look and whatnot, man, it looks like, the quarterback's sitting over there by himself, the guy that's supposed to be, one of the top 3 guys in the league. He's sitting over there by himself, dejected. You listen to his post-game conferences, he's just mopey and sad, and, just not the Josh Allen that everybody's known in Buffalo. So, there's that aspect. And then you also have, after the game Monday night, there's a Bills beat reporter that I follow on Twitter, X, whatever, and he puts it out there that he was waiting at Gabe Davis's locker after Gabe got done showering and changing and whatnot, and he asked for a comment, and Gabe said no, he didn't want to talk to the media. And granted, he was probably angry at himself for the football game he just played, but he's a team captain, man. That's part of the responsibility of wearing that C on your chest, is you're supposed to represent the team. You're supposed to be a spokesperson for the team, and to sit there and pout because you had a bad game is a bad look. And it sets a tone, because Shortly after, he said he went up to James Cook and asked to talk, and James Cook declined to comment. And it's just it's stuff like that that you hear and you start to see, and it's definitely a sign of concern that the coach could be losing the football team. And not only that aspect, but you'll see it was even pointed out, I don't know how many times, by Joe Buck or Troy Aikman during the broadcast. Obviously, first play of the game, James Cook fumbles. Bad. Yes, I get it. I've been the one, if you watch any of our other videos, I've been screaming for James Cook to get the football. And, obviously, the fumble's bad. It's a turnover. We get it. But it happens in NFL games. People turn the ball over. I mean, hell, look at Josh Allen. He turns the ball over, but you're not going to pull him from the game. He fumbles the ball, and we don't see him again until, I want to say, the second quarter. Like, McDermott put him in timeout, basically. He treated him like a 2-year-old and said, that was bad. Now go sit down. And I get the fact that you want to try and teach a young player, the value of football possession and not turning the ball over. I get that. But he's also maybe the third best player on your football team. You got Allen, you got Diggs, and then I would put Cook as number 3. I mean, he's just a freak. He's just a naturally God-given, born talented player, and it's maddening that he hasn't gotten the snaps that he's deserved. And then when he does get the snaps, he's rewarded his team. And last night, I believe, I'm not 100% sure, but I believe they said that was his first turnover since his first NFL carry last season when they opened in LA against the Rams. And I also want to say it was like, they said like 400 carries or something in between then and Monday night when he fumbled, between his last turnover. And so if you're gonna bench him for that, I mean, I get it if you make him sit out a play or two. I get it. But not 2 or 3 drives. I mean, what are we doing? I mean, and then you get, Gabe Davis. He's, I've touched on him just last week's video. Go back, check it out. He's not a wide receiver 2 in this league. And at the most, he's a middle of the road wide receiver 3. The comparison I saw on the internet, and I liked it, and I used it last week, was, he's like Santa Claus. He shows up once a year, gets everybody real excited, and then you don't see him again. And it's a perfect analogy for him, because he'll have a game like the Kansas City game where he'll show up, he'll have 4 touchdown passes, 200-plus yards, and everybody be drooling at the fact that Josh Allen has that kind of a weapon. But more times than not, you don't see him part of the game plan. Last week in Cincinnati, he didn't have a recorded catch. And then this week, he had a couple drops. One of them was a huge drop. It was a drive killer, not only a drive killer, but it was a turnover. They were in field goal range, and honestly, they were moving the ball pretty well. The way that the game was flowing for Buffalo on that drive, I would have expected to see 6 from a offense that I've watched these last handful of years. Like, that's a touchdown drive like 90% of the time. And third down, Josh tries to get him the football. It's a tight window, and Josh has got an arm. So he hums it in there, and Gabe can't catch it. And that we seem to say that every week is, Gabe dropped another one. And that was a huge one, man. It was a drive killer, went off his hands, and then it was a turnover, and took points off the board for the Bills. I mean, hell, that would have been 3 right there. Bills lost by 2. So, I mean, that's a difference in the game for sure. But the fact that McDermott didn't bench him for that drop is, I think, another reason why people are saying that maybe he's losing the locker room a little bit. And it's a fair point. I get it. And if I was, you know, if I was a player on that team, I'd be confused. Especially if I'm James Cook. Like, why are you punishing me? I've had I've had 2 turnovers so far in my career, and this guy drops a pass every week. So, yeah, it's a fair question, I think, and as a McDermott supporter, a guy that, I've never understood how some fans, after a couple bad games jump ship on a coach so quick, but this hasn't been just a couple games. It's been basically a streak of, going back to last year, midway through about this time of the season. So it was, about that time where the Bills started to get a little wavery last year. It started right around that massive snowstorm in Buffalo. And, the team hasn't looked the same since, really. And I can understand why fans are frustrated, and I'm basically on the side of maybe it's time for a new voice in Buffalo, a new coaching staff, but I don't know how feasible that really is. McDermott just signed a contract extension. Brandon Beane just signed a contract extension. If there were to be a coaching change in Buffalo, I would not expect Brandon Beane to follow him out the door. But as much as I think that maybe it is time for a coaching change, I don't see it happening just for that contract reason, one. And two, Bills owner Terry Pegula is a very hands-off owner. You don't see him just randomly taking questions from the media, or I think they said the last time he spoke publicly or took questions randomly at a Bills event was like 2019. And other than outside of these scheduled appearances, like at the groundbreaking for the new stadium, or maybe at training camp or something, he's MIA. And a lot of teams, I think, might like an owner like that. I mean, he's what Jerry Jones is to Dallas. Terry Pegula is the polar opposite in Buffalo. Like, you'll see Jerry Jones on TV every day if they allow him. But like I said, Terry Pegula, he's MIA. I think he trusts Beane and McDermott just to run things. Especially ever since Pegula's wife, Kim was the one that was the football president of the team, and I believe she was also the president of the Sabres. And whenever she had her medical issues last season, obviously she was not a part of the team, but Pegula was the one that supposedly took over those duties and never saw him. So I think he just entrusted Beane and McDermott with his team, and he's also, he's a big McDermott fan. That's his guy. So I'd be hard pressed to believe that a change is made, but at the same time, he's also an owner. He's a businessman. He knows eventually fans are going to get fed up with the product, and as loyal as Bills fans are, they're going to reach a breaking point at some point. I'll be honest. I've shut these last 2 games off. I've went back and watched the games the following day, just because the simple fact I watched the first half of every game. Or I'm sorry, I should say these last 2 games. I've watched the first half, and it's been the same story with his team. And I said, you know what? As a Bills fan of 30 years, I've seen this story before. I've watched the sequel after sequel after sequel with his team, and I'm not doing it. I've got kids now. I'm not letting them see me get all stressed out over football. I'm not letting it dictate my life. And I've watched the games the next day just to do these recaps and obviously keep up to date with what's going on. But there were videos this past week of guys walking out of the stadium recording themselves saying, after X amount of years as a Bills fan, this is the first time I've ever left a game early, and maybe that'll be what stirs the pot and makes Pagula see what's going on. But I don't know. At this point, it's just me rambling again, and I'm not trying to be that fan that just looks for something to complain. I think it's a valid issue that I have with this team, and there's a lot of, I would say 95% of Bills fans agree. Now, we're split on whose fault it is right now in Buffalo, and I think it's shared. Obviously right now Dorsey's the scapegoat. He's the one that got fired, but some of it falls on McDermott. Some of it, falls on, Matthew Smiley, the special teams coach. If I had to bet after that Monday night game who was going to get fired, I would have thought Smiley would have been the one that got fired, just simply because of the 12 men on the field that lost the game. But he still got a job, so I do think some of the blame falls on him lately, because the special teams unit's been absolutely atrocious. Not only is Sam Martin totally forgot how to punt footballs here lately, but our kick coverage has been abysmal, and some of it definitely has to do with Sam Martin hitting these low line drive, next to zero hang time punts. But even when he does hit a good one, man, our coverage team, that they seem to give up a big return like every other kick. So that's why I thought maybe he'd be the one out the door. And then some of the blame I would put on Brandon Beane. As much as everybody loves Brandon Beane, and I do too. I mean, he's the best GM the Bills have had in a long time. At some point, you've also got to look at, the massive contracts that Buffalo has coming up that are getting ready to just absolutely steamroll, the cap next season for the Bills. We've got a ton of money tied up next season into like 4 players. That's going to make it very hard to make some moves unless we're able to move some of those guys' money, or trade them or whatnot. But for instance, Von Miller, we're getting ready to start paying some of that massive contract next season. Trey White, he's due for a big chunk of money next season, and he may not even play until midway through next season, if he plays at all again. Matt Milano, his contract's coming. They just re-signed him 2 years ago, and his payday's coming. So there's some stuff on the Bills' books that it was almost like Brandon Beane, while he didn't say it and he almost denied it at times, it seemed like this was the Bills' window to go win a championship while he could still play around with the salary cap. But not saying the window's closed, but man, it's getting there, and I think the players feel it. I think management feels it. Coaches feel it, and I think that's why you saw Ken Dorsey get fired, and we'll see what happens from here. I mean, the Bills play the Jets this week. It's in Buffalo. Obviously, the first game of the season, they played the Jets in the Meadowlands, and that was an ugly game for the Bills. It was a Josh Allen turnover fest, and hopefully they've got things maybe more in check with that Jet defense. Maybe Joe Brady will have a different way of attacking them than what Dorsey had game planned for week 1. But it's going to be a tough test for Brady as his first game as a game caller, and I don't know. Hopefully this is the move that sparks the Bills. But if not, then at the worst case, sitting at 5-5 with a stacked AFC. Making the playoffs this year is going to be tough as it is, but not impossible, especially with a win this week. I mean, they jump up to basically with a win this week, they get to a 50-50 shot. But yeah, we'll see what Brady can dial up here. And at the worst case, it's an audition for the job for next season, and maybe we found our next OC, and if not, then we have the off season to search for the guy. There's a good chance that maybe Frank Reich in Carolina gets let go as the head coach. Obviously that team has not looked good, and he's had success as a offensive coordinator in the league. I mean, he's a Super Bowl offensive coordinator, so that's a possibility. Brian Daboll, there's rumors that he might get canned in with the Giants if they keep playing the way they're playing. But would he return to Buffalo in the same role he left? I don't know. Maybe. So we'll see. Like I said, it's 5-5. It's week 10. Buffalo still has 7 games left to play. When I sat down and did these videos, all season, I think I said, 10-7, I think, was what their ceiling is. And I don't know if that's good enough for a playoff spot, but, to win five games of their upcoming schedule is going to be tough. It's going to be tough, but it's doable if the offense figures it out and they let Josh Allen be Josh Allen and Diggs be Diggs and let James cook. It's doable. So fingers crossed that they get it turned around. Appreciate y'all listening to this longer than normal rant, but I feel like it was kind of necessary. Like I said, this is my 3rd attempt at recording it, and it seems like every time I sit down to do this, all the frustration from the last season and a season and a half kind of comes out. So appreciate y'all listening, fellow Bills fans. I'm sure you feel my pain. I'm sure there's probably some things I left out that you're probably pointing out right now. So, but yeah, appreciate y'all listening in. 10 weeks so far, and yeah, we'll see you next week, and hopefully the Bills have a nice win over the Jets. So appreciate y'all. Go Bills.